Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar entitled How Can the Hospitality and Leisure Sectors Prepare for Recovery? For those who don't know me, my name is Ruth Cousins and I'm the team leader for business advisors in the Gateway service for SEMLEP's Growth Hub. SEMLEP is South East Midlands Local Enterprise Partnership. We are a private public sector body, and one of our three strategic aims is to support businesses through the many challenges that they face throughout their lifetime from startup through to growth and beyond. I also had my own restaurant for 9 years, absolutely loved it, sold it in 2016, so this sector is quite a passion for me. COVID-19, as we all know, decimated our economy from March of this year, and the retail, hospitality and leisure industries have been all but crippled as a result. As we come now to reopening, hopefully from the 4th of July, this sector alone will require massive change to processes, services, and the best chance of success for this sector will be businesses who have adopted innovative strategies and diversification during lockdown to ensure that they have sustained revenue generation and they are ready to capitalise on the changes to consumer trends and behaviours which have changed throughout the last 3 or 4 months, as well as being practically ready to open under the new COVID-19 guidelines for reopening. So what we're going to do is discuss all those issues, and we have a panel of speakers today to help us with that. We've got Richard Clifford, who is the Public Affairs and Policy Manager from UK Hospitality Association. We've got Ben Salvateris, and I apologise, Ben, if I pronounced that incorrectly, who's an Environmental Health Officer from Central Bedfordshire Council. We were going to have Paul Dexter, who's the owner of a pub in Earls Barton, the Old Swan pub in Earls Barton, but he has got supply issues for reopening on Saturday and hasn't got anything to sell at the moment, so he needs to spend his time trying to talk to suppliers and ensure that he has enough stock. But I can cover a bit off about the pub industry. We also have Danny Haley, who is a fitness and master trainer, and Ian Stewart, who's the CEO from Destination MK. Now, I'm just going to ask each of them to quickly just introduce themselves, just a little bit about themselves, and then what we'll do is we'll move on to the discussion and you'll get a feel for what we're trying to bring out in today's webinar. So, Richard, over to you. If you just give us a little bit about yourself, please.
Morning, everyone, and thanks for having us on this today. Obviously, a vital time for the sector. It's great to be involved. So, Richard Clifford, Public Affairs and Policy Manager for UK Hospitality, been in post for the last 18 months. Those of you that haven't heard of us, UK Hospitality are a trade association that represents businesses from across the hospitality sector, pubs, restaurants, bars, contract catering, hotels, various different businesses from across the best sector in the UK, in my opinion. So yeah, we represent various different businesses, and we've obviously been at the forefront of all efforts to try and push for a restart and also ensure that businesses in our sector are protected from what has been an unprecedented challenge so far. So we've been working hard and obviously going to continue trying to work hard to ensure that businesses are able to recover as quickly as they can.
Brilliant, Richard. Okay, Ben, do you want to tell me a little about yourself?
Yes, I'm Ben Salvatore. I'm an Environmental Health Officer employed by Central Bedfordshire Council. My background is I've been an EHO for 24 years, showing my age, mainly working in local government. I specialise in health and safety, although in my career I've worked in other facets of environmental health, such as food safety, housing, pollution, public health, and so on. In my job as a regulator, the primary piece of legislation that I enforce is the Health and Safety at Work Act, which is the enabling act, and the other pieces of legislation such as COSH, Management of Safety Regulation, that you're all familiar with. In terms of experience, in my career, I've inspected a wide range of premises across different industries, so I have a fairly good idea how you operate. Either through advisory or enforcement work. I've seen it throughout my career. I'm also authorised by Central Bedfordshire Council to enforce the Health Protection Coronavirus Restrictions England Regulation 2020, which in the last 3 months, we've engaged most of our work in prioritised work, using that piece of legislation to address issues with the coronavirus and lockdowns. From a regulator's perspective, I'm here to offer support and advice wherever. But if I can't give you any answers today, I'm happy to take questions and get back to you at some point. And also, I'm looking forward to hearing your views, concerns, and prior to reopening. Hopefully, I'll be able to pick up useful information from this forum and share them with my colleagues. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ben. Danny, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Morning, I'm Danny. I've spent the last 15 years in the military, in the army to be precise, before moving into the fitness industry, where I started off pretty much rock bottom on the gym floor in a leisure centre. And over the last 5 years, I now am master trainer across 3 companies. So we've got Energy Fitness, which is a massive UK and now Europe brand. We've got Victor Soul, which is a high-end boutique studio in London, and an online TV channel on Trendfit TV. So just master trainer across them, trying to bring everyone else up to speed, try and get everyone online. It's coincide with COVID. And pretty much it, really.
Brilliant.
Still an uncertain time for us.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Danny. And Ian.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being on the call today. So I'm the CEO of Destination Milton Keynes. We work closely with STEMLab, other destination management organisations, and Visit Britain to try and help everybody recover from this pandemic. My experiences prior to being CEO at DMK, I was the MD at Heart Radio, which some of you may know, and 30 years of experience in kind of local media and national media with a background of sales, PR and marketing. So hopefully we can pose some questions today that may help you recover from this situation.
Wonderful, thanks Ian. Just to say to everybody that we do welcome questions. If you could put them into the chat box on the Zoom call, and then we will deal with as many as we can. If we can't get through them all, we will make sure we answer them and send answers out via email later on. Okay, thanks everybody for introducing yourselves. Well, we're going to move on to the panel discussion now. I'm going to start with you, Richard, if you don't mind. From a national perspective, what's the state of play with regards to preparing for the reopening of the hospitality and leisure industry?
Yes, thanks very much, Ruth. In terms of looking at where we are going now in terms of reopening, it's probably quickly useful to think about the situation that the sector found itself in from the 20th of March, and the situation that hospitality businesses are facing, what, as I mentioned before, is obviously completely unprecedented situation. So from the 20th of March, hospitality businesses across the UK were forced to close, as you all probably know, from not being able to go to the pub, and it's obviously decimated the sector's ability to trade. So we estimated that roughly 90% of all hospitality businesses across the UK were either unable to trade or were doing so at substantially reduced levels. So you've got 10%, so primarily in the takeaway sector, some accommodation hotels, some contract catering that stayed open. But for the most part, businesses have been closed for the best part of 4 months. So clearly it's decimated the sector. Annualised trade now from the sector has been down about 2.6%. So as you can imagine, 4 months out without being able to trade, it's clearly had a horrible impact on businesses right across the gamut of hospitality. So really facing this massive crisis whereby businesses have been able to open, and now we're looking to try and move forward and take advantage of this opportunity now on the 4th of July, and that's what it is. Obviously, businesses are excited to be able to reopen. I think we're aware that they're doing so optimally, obviously with social distancing restrictions in place and obviously gatherings being capped at 30 people. It's going to be difficult for venues to open as they used to, but we're seeing a lot of businesses attempting to adapt and obviously make sure that they're able to open and do so as best they can. So you'll see that if you're coming out this weekend, obviously Super Saturday when pubs reopen, when businesses reopen, I think everyone's excited to try and get out and about. You'll see changes to the way that they're functioning. You'll see changes to the way that they're set out. There'll be various new regulations in place, which the government has released over the course of the last 2 weeks. So it's going to be a very different look to hospitality. But I think the main thing is that we are reopening, we're getting back to speed again, and that's obviously something very positive for most of the sector. Also, for parts of hospitality, they're still unable to reopen. But for a lot of businesses, 4th of July or the weeks that will follow after that, we'll see kind of the start of recovery and the start of kind of get back to normal. So,
I was going to say, you mentioned the changes to the way that they operate. How do you think that the new guidelines and the way in which they're going to operate with the new social distancing, the 1 metre rule, and everything that they have to undertake, how is that going to affect the industry in their preparations for opening, and also the future success of the industry? How do you think that's going to impact?
As long as the social distancing measures in place, is obviously going to be a challenge. Various venues are going to have to deal with massively reduced space in terms of how much they have on offer, and that's clearly going to impact the ability to trade. I think we're expecting, it differs by sector. Obviously, some will be more able to operate with restrictions in place, but if you look at something like the pub sector, with 1 metre social distancing, you're probably looking at about 37% capacity in comparison to what you would expect from a normal trade. So in comparison to last year, where you would have obviously 100% capacity, about 30% capacity. Things like accommodation businesses might be different. You might expect about 40% plus, but for the most part, there's going to be big restrictions on the amount of people that are actually able to enter these businesses. And obviously with caps at the minute on gatherings, but at 30, there are going to be restrictions, and it's going to be difficult for a lot of businesses to try and function. One positive, I think, of reopening as well is that you'll see a mass return of workers. Obviously, we've all seen the furlough scheme, which the sector has been delighted with and has welcomed massively. It's saved, it's not an exaggeration, it's saved millions of jobs at this time. It's also helped thousands of businesses continue trading. We'd obviously like to see it continue for a longer period until businesses are able to trade properly and trade back at normal levels. But for the most part, it's been welcomed by the sector, and it's obviously been great. You're going to see about 1 million workers return throughout July and August to the hospitality sector. So that's great news that we're going to have these people back. Flexible furloughs going to allow them to come back part-time and work back in businesses. But we're going to be back, which is going to be great. And it's going to be part of recovery. People are going back to work, and hopefully, fingers crossed, as things return to normal, with people going back, people are going to be going back to office spaces, people are going to go back into central parts of cities gradually. Hopefully we'll see hospitality recover, and we'll see more people going into our businesses.
There's a very interesting question that's come in that's linked to something that you said. You mentioned, of course, that 37% of the amount of revenue that you'll generate, those of you who weren't with the social distancing rules. How do you feel that's going to impact on pricing in the industry? And also, do you have any examples, whether it be nationwide or locally to us, of businesses of how they have diversified or are looking at different innovative ways to do it, so that 37% doesn't mean a massive increase in prices to the clientele, but also helps revenue generation for the industry?
So again, it's going to be business specific as to what businesses have on offer that will enable them to try and make the most of their new capacity. I think we've seen various different businesses over the course of lockdown diversify, as you mentioned before, the ability to trade and takeaway. You'll see takeaway services from pubs and stuff. I think what you might see increasingly, and it's something that UK hospitality has been pushing for, is greater flexibility to use outside space so that you're able to, move out onto the pavement and have people trade. That's going to be something that's key, allowing these businesses to use that space and optimize their space to maximize the amount of people that they may have in. Obviously, if you're a small venue and you have 1 metre social distancing, you can all imagine a small restaurant. There's not too many tables you can get in there. But if you're able to extend that out onto the pavement, and if this is permitted in law, and we're hopeful, there is a bill that's going through Parliament at the moment that should allow for that. We're hopeful that's going to happen. You'll see at least more, it tips the balance in favour. And, businesses are going to be operating so economically, and it's going to be a huge challenge. There's no doubt about that. And, some businesses will struggle to survive. But at the same time, we've just got to move forward. And I think that's really a positive change. So you'll see businesses looking to try and adapt and use their outside space, use various spaces that are available to them, potentially try and take advantage of other options that they have to try and maximise their potential during these, unprecedented times where they're having to really cut their space in half.
Yeah. So from your members' point of view, and for any business surveys that you've done, have any of your members said that they're going to look at increasing pricing? Do you think that will have they said that, or they're going to try and do what they can at original pricing and hope for the best?
Yeah, I think it's an individual business decision, to be honest. I haven't heard in any of the roundtables or any of the work that I've done with businesses so far there's going to be necessarily an increase in price. I think it'll be an individual business decision as they move forward and just try to deal with this new reality. Again, I've used the word a few times. It is largely unprecedented for businesses to come back after this, 4 months of closure. Hospitality businesses generally would be cash poor, cash intensive, so they pay for their overhead costs with cash that comes through the door. So generally speaking, they don't have huge amounts of cash saved away. That usually goes on paying overhead costs like staff. So, there are challenges, of course, if trading is down and trading is very low, it's going to be difficult. That's why we're obviously dependent to an extent on government support, like the furlough scheme continuing, and obviously making sure that there are certain areas of hospitality, for example, nightclubs and businesses that just aren't going to be able to open from the 4th because of social distancing. It's important to see this support extended for those businesses until they're able to trade at break-even levels.
Okay, just one other question. What about the venues that are out there, the resorts, the wedding venues? Do you have any specific advice or guidelines to help them get back into recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, UK Hospitality, we are currently working on some, on basically producing a crib sheet almost of frequently asked questions from businesses about the guidelines. Obviously, we're delighted the guidelines have been released, but also aware that there is a lack of clarity in certain areas. So, yeah, it's certainly we've been engaging with members. We have a lot of members who will have who've used their venues as wedding venues. We work with a lot of providers as well, and obviously the supplier sector as well will feed into that kind of thing. So, yeah, we're still working on that area in terms of providing advice and stuff. So yeah, we absolutely are working in that area. Obviously, with restrictions on gatherings, it's difficult at the moment. Gatherings are restricted to 30 unless there's specified situations, which we imagine are going to be fairly onerous and fairly difficult to use. So it's going to be 30 people and social distance for a period of time, and that's going to cause big differences for events companies, for meetings and stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to be difficult for a period of time, but we're just continuing to work with membership, continuing to feed into government the views of business, and trying to make sure that we communicate. This is the third largest sector in the UK. It's vital. We need to try and communicate that if the UK is to restart, if we to have a positive restart after this, hospitality is going to be key there. So we're just continuing to try and communicate the views of business into government and make sure that people are listening.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Richard. That moves quite nicely on to Ben. From a regulatory perspective, what are the top 5 steps that you would say to businesses are the most important to ensure that they are COVID ready when they reopen and not going to flout any local authority rules and regulations?
First and foremost, if business expectations that they're going to get a visit from environmental health, the answers for the time being is no. We would allow you to sort of, obtain as much information from the government, translate them into actions, what you need to do in order to open safely. As before, prior to the pandemic, the priority we look at is the quality of the risk assessment. Basically, we judge how businesses are managing risk through their risk assessments. The other 4 steps usually are captured by the risk assessment in the form of their mitigating measures, controls measures such as COVID, secure policies that may have protocols, procedures, manual safe systems of work. As you know, it's a legal requirement that the document is a legal requirement, therefore it has to be done properly and thoroughly. And I would emphasise that whoever's writing the risk assessment is competent. That means that they either have the experience, the knowledge, or the training to write those. The law says you have to write what's suitable and sufficient, sufficient risk assessment. In simple terms, you have to identify what the hazards are. In this instance, it would be the virus and transmission to people, and the risk, the likelihood that people are going to be infected. And the mitigating measures would be, as I mentioned, would be your safe systems of work, policies, procedures, instructions, manuals that your employees will need to understand and be able to implement. Need to involve employees in writing risk assessment, very important, or your safety reps, because they're the most important people that will give you a rundown on what's really out there on the ground floor, and their concerns will be valuable. Very important that the implementation, the monitoring, and the revision of those risk assessments are carried out. Because I've been to places where they've got measures in place, but the implementation, the monitoring, and the social distancing just goes to pots. And it's the monitoring side of things that need to be addressed very carefully.
Okay, so from a local authority perspective, there are national guidelines for reopening and about the 1 metre distance. One thing I found out recently, and I didn't know when I was talking to the pub business, that you can't have sauces for your food, you need sachets, all sorts of different things that come into place. Are all local authorities going to adopt the same procedures, or depending on whether you're in Northamptonshire, Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Milton Keynes, are they going to be worried about whether there's going to be different rules and regulations, or is it what the COVID-19 guidelines are, what they are?
There are guidance available. For example, the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health have issued guidance, government guidance on how food premises should operate, and in terms of consistency and enforcement and regulation, I'm not entirely sure. But from our experience, we have a primary authority partnership with Motto Services, and they've asked us to provide assured advice because of their multiple outlets around the UK. So we've looked at their systems, and what you've just said is it had been captured within the policy. So we have issued advice on how things should be done properly with regard to sort of.
And those kind of guidelines and information we can put out later with links to all the government websites to
Yes.
give them exact details. That would be great for all our attendees. Richard mentioned about using outside space. There's a number of things about questions about fees for outside space, licensing. I mean, when I had my restaurant, to get an uptake usage of outside space was nigh on impossible. I know that Richard mentioned that the government are thinking of changing that. What about from a local authority perspective, and an environmental health perspective, the rules and regulations with regards to businesses using outside space that's available to them that they might not have a license for at the moment, but to help revenue generation? What's your viewpoint on that? What's the local authority stance on that?
I'm still liaising with the licensing team in those areas, so I'm not 100% okay, but I can give you the answers on that, given the time. So, but
Okay.
I haven't been involved in those aspects because
That's
we've been
fine,
inundated with other pieces of work.
Yeah, there's a number of questions on that kind of thing, because of course the people that are listening to this, they're like going, well, how am I going to increase my revenue? What am I going to be able to do? I can use my outside space, I can do takeaways, I can do deliveries. The planning applications were removed for doing takeaways and deliveries for the hospitality industry. We're not sure whether they're going to come back into place. There's the outside space. So understanding what relaxations in the regulation are available, but also to enable our businesses to operate within the guidelines and don't fall foul of the law would be absolutely key if you could find out any information about that.
I would indeed. Thank you.
That's brilliant.
Ruth, just while you're talking there, Ruth, just from a Milton Keynes perspective, I know that Milton Keynes Council are looking at not only reducing the cost, but also extending the amount of space that some of the restaurants and outlets in the city centre of Milton Keynes are allowed. So I think it's a case of talk to your council, because I think it varies from council to council. But certainly in Milton Keynes, they are looking at relaxing some of the rules.
That's brilliant. That's majorly important, and hoping that the weather stays good for all the outside space kind of thing. From a local authority environmental health aspect, Ben, because that is quite key for stopping the spreading of the virus, is there any other issues or any recommendations that you would provide to our attendees today from an environmental health aspect to help them be COVID ready for the 4th of July to open?
Basically, the 5 steps is a very good guide to follow in terms of following procedures. Having procedures in place is very important, and having competent staff who can follow guidance and implement them. There are in all honesty, I've only been involved with one premises that I've had to sort of assess their policy and procedures, but the guidance itself is self-explanatory to follow. The problem what we've encountered is that members of the public that do not follow what the guidance, what the systems are in place, and it's important that businesses enforce the social distancing rule that they have. And they're the main issues that I have. There are systems in place, but it's when members of the public breach those rules and how the businesses react.
Are there any laws or guidelines that support the employees for the businesses in dealing with the public? If a member of the public doesn't want to do a on meter, they've had a few drinks, the well-being of the employee is vital. So what sort of guidelines help the business and the employee if they're going to deal with that kind of situation?
That would be down to the individual businesses, how they deal with it. They might call the police, they might call us, more or less invariably they'll call the police.
Right.
In terms of authorizations, it can be a bit of a problem, and members of the public can be have the false impression that everything's done by environmental health, and that there has been confusion on their part and what their expectations are.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Ben. We were going to, as I say, have a pub here. I just want to, just before I move on to the leisure industry and talk to Danny, I just want to say a bit about, I spent a couple of hours with the pub landlord this week, and it was fascinating watching through lockdown how many businesses, and I've been reading here about Whittlebury Hall and how they've adapted, and other industries have adapted. From a small local pub perspective, the local pub in Earl's Barton, the Old Swan pub, has done things like this. This is called a pub in a box. What they've done is they've created the new marketing and a box and everything, and you can order these for £20, and it will be delivered free to your door within the local area. They also do things like takeaways, so Friday night's burger night, Saturday night is chicken night, Sunday roast, to keep the awareness and the revenue generation going. And on top of all of that, to keep their awareness and marketing going, they have provided free meals to the vulnerable and the elderly in the local community there. And they have done thousands and thousands of meals over the last 4 months for the elderly. And that way, they've even been on the One Show with people saying how wonderful it is that the Old Swan pub in Earl's Barton, now bearing in mind that's a national programme, has kept the momentum going during lockdown. On the reopening side, that has given them fantastic momentum with which to go into recovery. And I think one of the things from the pub sector that Paul wanted to get across, and from the restaurant sector, is think about everything in a different light than you did before. Be innovative in what you're doing. Pubs never normally did delivery of alcohol. I mean, that's off-site sales. I know there's licensing involved with that, but off-site sales, deliveries, takeaways, when, as Richard rightly said, you know, only 30% of revenue will be able to come in through the door with the social distancing rules. The successful pubs and restaurants will be thinking, how do I supplement that? Outside space, doing different things like delivery of burgers, competing in markets that they would never normally compete in before. And I think that's the one thing that Paul wanted to bring across, is that we have to think differently in the hospitality sector as how we're going to succeed in the future, because the future is nowhere near the same as it has been in the past. And that's what he wanted to bring across, the difference in innovation. So that's very quickly from me on the pub sector. So now I want to move on to Danny and to have a look at the leisure sector, which isn't as easily to, well, the government doesn't feel it can reopen as quickly, and we haven't got a date for reopening for gyms and the leisure sector, swimming pools and whatever. So I just want to ask Danny, so what impact do you feel the pandemic and the lockdown has had on the fitness industry as a whole, and how have you diversified during lockdown to continue to provide a service to your clients?
So as a whole, from a gym perspective, literally everything closed down overnight. Every single staff was put on furlough. The big thing about the fitness industry, 65% of people are self-employed. So a lot of people fell through the cracks with a furlough scheme. So that was difficult for a lot of people, myself included. And it became almost, a lot of people still, it's a scary place to go now because of the COVID, the threat and everything else. So we had to change people's perception of the gym and the cleanliness and everything else. From a personal point of view, I then had to quickly find a way of interacting with my clients, with the members from the gym, stuff like that, just to keep them engaged and make them feel still part of that community that we work so hard to build. And we were constantly on social media, put out free sessions, literally 3 or 4 times a day across every single social media platform, until we settled on integrating a booking system with an online TV channel to then bring forward, you know what I mean, the adoption of digital fitness has come forward by about 3 years by getting online, and everyone is now slowly picking up on that. So we've integrated that with Zoom, and that's proved to be really, really successful, to be honest.
That's brilliant. So you feel that in the industry as a whole, what you were thinking of doing has just been fast-paced forward, and now we're ahead. Are you ahead of the game? Do you feel that the industry is going to be able to adapt going forward, bringing all this stuff in?
I think as an industry as a whole, I can't really speak for that because we're very proactive in what we do. We're lucky to work for some very proactive owners and stuff like that. So we have literally been on tenterhooks all the time. As soon as the restrictions have been lifted, we've been, boom, we can do this now. We can do this now. We can do this now. And where I've seen small, independently owned gyms literally fold overnight, losing premises, losing members, because we had to cancel and freeze a lot of memberships. A lot of people just cancelled memberships. So all of a sudden, a gym of over 2,000 people is not bringing in any money. I think it's very hard. I think it's going to be very hard for the fitness industry to recover. I think a lot of big gyms will suffer because they haven't got that community feel, what we've really, really instilled with our lot. So we've stayed in contact constantly, offering them free services, keeping them going throughout and making them feel involved and actually care about them. And I think, if anything, it's made the community stronger.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So now that lockdown started to ease, but you haven't got the green light to reopen as we would like, sort of what steps are you taking to make your business COVID secure? Now, I know you mentioned TV and things like that.
Yeah, so
to get the reality of.
Yeah, so a big chunk of it is online now, and the rate at which that's progressing. We started off with 20 classes per week, and we're now about to launch from this month 50 classes per week. So that's 50 live classes. From a personal trainer point of view, the one-on-one sessions, as soon as that was relaxed, when you could meet somebody in the park at social distancing with constantly sanitizing kit, constantly washing kit that we've used. A lot of body weight sessions were utilized just to get things moving again. And then as soon as we were allowed to groups of 6, including your instructor, again, small group training was then implemented straight away. Again, a lot of people sat back and didn't really get involved. And again, we were very proactive in what we did. So it's literally the night it was announced, the next day we were out and we were doing what we needed to do, just to try and get ahead of the curve a little bit.
So on the digital side, I think across the whole leisure and hospitality industry, technology innovation, which I will come to later, is quite key. Have you seen a massive adoption of clientele going to do that kind of thing? And do you feel that going to the future, when you're allowed back into a gym and you can do one-to-one, face-to-face, that kind of thing, that digital offer will still remain quite high?
I think the digital offer is definitely here to stay. I definitely think it's the future. What we have done is we have now grabbed a different type of audience. Those guys who were really self-conscious, anxious about going to a gym environment because the misconceptions of a gym, you know what I mean? People are very self-conscious when they go, if they want to start out. And now we've got people working out from home. We've got people who were hardcore gym goers who would never thought, oh, I can't do home workouts, and now jumping around in their living rooms and their kitchens and their gardens and absolutely loving it. So we've definitely attracted a new type of clientele. And again, it's building that community because of it being live sessions. These people are allowing us into their homes. So as we are now with the Zoom, with the cameras, if they choose to have their camera on, they're letting us into their life, which again creates more of that personal feeling towards it, which I think the live sessions would be so much more successful than the current on-demand stuff that's been readily available for years.
And is it a subscription base, or your pay-per-view, or how do you? It
is subscription. So subscription, pay a monthly fee, very reasonable. Don't mind mentioning it. It's $13.50. You know what I mean? So for a month and we cover everything. We cover yoga, Pilates, bar, boxing training, HIIT training, dance, fitness. I mean, we give it such, and spinning. We've got spinning involved now as well. So we've got. We rented off all our bikes. So all the spin bikes that were in the spin room, we had 20 bikes down at Energy Fitness in Leighton Buzzard, and we rented them out to members. So we said, do you want a bike? Come get a bike. All of a sudden now they can do spin from home, because as you're probably aware, spinning is quite a big community. They're very hardcore, very close knit, and all of a sudden we can now provide that for them. So yeah, again, we've just adapted constantly, been very proactive in what we've done.
That's absolutely brilliant. So would you say for any gym owners or leisure facilities out there that actually this has been kind of an opportunity for you, because you've now opened the industry to a set of clientele that would never go to a gym at all?
Massively.
So the potential there is probably quite enormous.
Yeah, it is, and especially from a personal point of view as well. Like my client base, one-on-one wise, has gone through the roof. I'm now working alongside WW UK, so I'm now their official PT on their app, which is a 10,000 active members. So yeah, it's gone. You literally gone from strength to strength. Well, again, it's on an individual basis. Where have they been proactive? Like I said, a lot of gyms have literally just closed the doors, frozen memberships, and just left it at that. So if any advice to people would be proactive, get out there, make people feel that they're wanted, you're not just after their money. And it would go, again, like I said, it goes from strength to strength.
That's great. So do you feel that your motivation during lockdown was the fact that a lot of personal trainers slipped through that furlough net and slipped through the government's measures of support? Do you think that affected the way in which you approach lockdown and approach your recovery?
Yeah, massively. To be honest, speaking definitely personally, I fell through the cracks because I hadn't been self-employed long enough with the records and everything else that I needed. So I literally sat there for 2 months with no work. We went from, you know what I mean, like I said, before this happened, I don't mind saying, a very successful personal trainer across 3 platforms in and out of London, to having 0 income for 2 months. So definitely we went through every avenue possible to try and get through the furlough scheme, and they just kept getting roadblocks at every step we went through. And then as soon as we settled on a platform to get a booking system in, to get people online, get people just trickling a little bit of money in and paying, we just ran with it. And it, like I say, I keep saying it, but we have really gone from strength to strength, and the online stuff is definitely here to stay.
That's brilliant. So just before I move on to Ian, is there any sort of final remarks you'd want to say about, I mean, you've said some amazing things about proactivity, innovation. Is there any tips that you would give to the gym or leisure industry, smaller businesses that haven't really been proactive, what they could do now, as we're getting very close, we could just about see the light at the end of the tunnel on reopening?
Yeah, so what we've done is, like it's been mentioned on all the other stuff with the pubs and stuff, with the social distancing aspect of kit. And it's about making people feel safe and ready to come back to the gym. A lot of people are still scared. A lot of people won't be going to the pub this weekend because they're scared. So it's about making people feel safe and attracting them in rather than trying to give it the hard sell. And I think just try and be as personal as possible to try and get them back in.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Danny. That was great. Ian, how do you believe that future socializing habits will change in the leisure and hospitality businesses now that we're coming out, or we've been in lockdown and we're coming out now?
No, absolutely. Well, there are many on the panel and I guess attending today's call who are far better qualified than I to talk about safe opening, government advice, systems, cleanliness, PPE, all of that. What I'd like to do is maybe just answer a few questions or pose a few questions about exactly that. The fact that people are going to be operating differently from a customer perspective going forward. I'm consulting with a number of businesses at the moment, and the question I'm asking people is that if future socializing is going to be in trusted groups and trusted environments, what does that mean for your business? It's a really easy question to ask, but it's a really complex set of answers. But I think if businesses are going to be successful, we've gone through preparation. We're now going through that tough stage of actually opening and trading again. But the reality is that all of the normal rules of marketing and economy will remain, but in a completely new environment. So it's really important to understand what your customers are looking for. I noticed there's been a question on the panel, one making the point about will people raise prices, which I think is a really dangerous thing to do. Your existing customers will immediately feel that they're having to pay for the fact that your business can't deliver. So I think that's a really dangerous game to play, even though you may argue that you can't operate profitably without raising prices. Like I say, your customers will not react particularly well to that, in my opinion. But if future socializing needs to be in trusted groups and environments, how can your business adapt to make people feel that they can trust you? What's the messages that you put out? What marketing are you going to use? Are your marketing platforms that you used to use still relevant? And how are you going to take it going forward? So I think that's a question that every business should be asking itself, not what can I do, what can I sell, how can I adapt, even though those things are really, really important. The question to be asking right now is, what are my customers going to expect 4 months after lockdown started? And if I can't deliver what they expect, regardless of price, they will not come back. So we need to be thinking really hard about customers' new expectation levels.
That's very, very interesting. And following on from that, do you feel that consumer behaviour, consumer trends have changed for the good now? Are we in a completely different environment of the way that people behave? I mean, Danny was saying, you know, people probably won't go to the pub if they're scared. Will they never go back to the pub? Will the whole eating out process, will the whole industry and consumer behaviour, do you feel that has changed? And then what do you how do you feel that will affect the future of the industry?
So yes, of course it's changed, and I think some people's habits will have changed for good. I don't believe that people will not go to restaurants anymore, and I don't believe that people won't go to pubs. I think there will still be a trade to be had, but those pubs and restaurants that are going to be successful are those that understand that all of the stuff we used to talk about pre-COVID, about customer care, about focusing on the customer, where perhaps we didn't always really focus on the customer, we were too busy trying to make a profit. Those things now become absolutely paramount. We know from kind of human psychology that new habits are formed after 13 weeks. Well, we've been longer than 13 weeks in lockdown, and the stuff that Danny's spoken about in terms of the fitness industry, it has created opportunities, but at the same time, because of the nature of this particular industry, leisure, tourism, retail and hospitality, they're all choice products. If my car needs a service today, in fact it did yesterday, I will take it to the same garage I used to take it to, because it's a kind of a necessity to get the car serviced. However, going to the pub, eating out, going to the cinema are things that I can choose not to do because they're not a necessity. So it's really, really important that if customer habits have changed, what is your business going to do differently to make sure that customers who now believe watching a film at home with a beer that cost £1, rather than watching a TV in the pub with a beer that costs £5, how are we going to get them to come back to our premise? Not a particularly good example, but you understand the situation that we face. So that habit forming piece is something that the industry now needs to get hold of itself. And start saying to themselves, okay, how do I get people back on a long-term basis? And I really believe that we need to be thinking much harder about what the customers are expecting as opposed to what we want to offer as we go forward.
That's absolutely key. I was funnily saying that to somebody the other day. And then from the leisure, tourism, hospitality viewpoint, do you feel that those businesses that were very active during lockdown with awareness, proactivity, innovation, they will stand in a better stead going forward than those who shut their doors, closed, hope to then just reopen and go back to normal? What's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, well, certainly every research that it's ever been done that I've ever read, and I've been in advertising and marketing for 35, 40 years, always says that those businesses that continue to market and adapt during a recession usually come out of that recession stronger and accelerate faster than those businesses who don't react, don't continue to market, and don't continue to be kind of present. Now, obviously, this has been a particularly strange situation in the sense that a lot of businesses didn't even have the choice of whether to be present and continue marketing. But certainly, those pubs, restaurants, and outlets that still made an offer and made an effort to their customers should be in a good position to keep those relationships strong and rebuild them. Those that didn't have the opportunity will have to work twice as hard now. It doesn't mean that they can't be successful. I really believe that everybody still has a place, but we really do need to think differently about the psychology of our customers and what they want from us rather than what we want to offer them.
That's great. And finally then, what if there was any one or possibly two things that you would say that businesses should focus on now for recovery in reopening, what would you say to our attendees today?
Okay, I've got 6, sorry, not 1 or 2.
6 is fine.
There's just, so I've kind of been surfing the net for the last, 13 weeks, just trying to find the best advice, and the stuff that I've come up with, kind of, ask some questions. I'm happy to share this with the attendees after the call. But number one, prioritise your prospective customers, your employees and your wider community equally, and communicate with all three of those groups brilliantly. It's really important right now that your employees, your customers and the people that are connected with your business know exactly what it is you're doing, what you're trying to achieve, and so that they understand, and that's critical. Number two is tap social media to understand your customers and the market's opinions. Surveys are not a good measure right now because people are in a brand new world. So don't send out surveys saying, would you do this in the future? Would you do that? Just tap into social media and really understand what your customers are looking for. Somebody has already mentioned, and somebody has posted on the chat, ask and listen to your employees, because they will really understand what's working and what's not working in this new world that you're opening into. So really listen to your employees. They've got a really good on the ground feel for what's happening in your business. Number four, set up really simple measures for success and failure on your customer experience, and be really agile then in the ability to change them quickly if either of them are telling you that something isn't working. So agility in business. Number five is how contactless can you be? Question mark. And number six, finally, your customers, when they return, will be the best ever marketing tool or your worst ever hidden enemy. What will your first set of customers say about the experience they've had in your venue? And so getting that bit right is absolutely critical, because if they go away with a bad experience, not only will they not come back, but they will tell all of their friends what a terrible experience they had. So it's really, really important that your customer experience and journey in the first few weeks is absolutely spot on. And dare I say, beware in this new world, litigation.
Brilliant. Yes, absolutely. And we will share those 6 points to the attendees after, because they are absolutely valid and very, very important. I've got one further question that I'm going to put open to all the panel, and would love some comments via the chat from the attendees, is what are your thoughts on innovation in technology, the digital aspect technology in using iPads for social distancing ordering? Do you feel that there is enough innovation in technology to help the retail, leisure, hospitality, tourism industry recover? Or do we feel that there should be more innovation out there? Are there any areas that you feel, especially Danny, in operating your business, that haven't been matched by excuse me, technology? Whittleby Hall has said they've put IT systems so that every room has an IT system to be able to help social distancing. But I'm wondering whether there's anything out there that, or Richard, from the UK Hospitality Association point of view, that we could do as a country with regards to innovation in technology to help the sector recover more. Richard first.
Yeah, I'll be jumping in here. Yes, I think from a sector perspective, particularly in the short term, as we adapt to restrictions on obviously social distancing restrictions, it's inevitable that technology is going to play a role in this, be it ordering at tables as well, just to facilitate less social contact. So it's inevitable there is going to be more use of technology, track and trace and the like as well, with QSR scanning, and it's something that's in the works as well with the government. So it's inevitable that it is now going to become a part, at least in the short term, of life in the hospitality sector. So I think there is that innovation going on. I know there's a lot of suppliers who are developing various different schemes, various different resources to try and help this. So yeah, I think it's inevitable that it's going to impact hospitality, at least in the short term. I'd say echo something that Ian said as well, that I know that obviously as pubs look to pubs, restaurants, hotels, whatever it may be, one bad experience could indeed sink a hotel, sink a venue if it is bad for consumers. So it's important to actually make sure that these measures are in place, that you actually have this technology that actually enables people to feel safe. Because there's a recent survey that we did alongside CGA, I'll just mention this now quickly into his recovery, 60% of those that responded said that safety was their predominant concern about going to a new venue. So it's safety as opposed to returning to what they may have seen in February or January. So it's really important for businesses to follow the guidelines as strictly as they possibly can, make sure they're aware of what's required of them so that they're able to make customers feel safe. And if technology plays a role in that, it may well do. That's something that business is obviously going to have to adapt to quite quickly.
That's really interesting. I'm going to move on to Ben, actually, because from an environmental health safety point of view, especially in the hospitality industry, are you finding that there's any more innovation in technology of suppliers saying, we can help with the environmental health aspect?
At the moment, it's fairly slow, and I wish what Richard said, comes to fruition. But my concern is the social distancing aspect. I've heard that there's now pubs are now using apps for ordering, on their phones, ordering food and drinks, and whereby the services in terms of contact between customers and employees now minimized. I welcome that, but there has been, my observations is that I've got concerns in certain areas where, in takeaways like Burger King, McDonald's, where you have electronic, ordering boards, and you've got a member of the public are queuing up, and you've got a member of staff standing in the middle, wiping down the board after they made the order, and patrolling the queues. And in the meantime, the time it takes for that process generates more queues and congregation in smaller areas. But with the innovation of the use of apps, that would eliminate those problems in small areas. I mean, that's my experience at the moment in terms of technology.
Okay, you haven't had any experience from the back office kind of view, from the kitchens, from environmental health, that side? Any forms?
Nothing at the moment, nothing at present. Very limited experience in that aspect.
Okay, Danny, you've adopted a lot of technology recently. Is there any areas that you think that innovative technology companies could grow on, especially in the leisure sector, or are they really on trend at the moment?
I think they've had to up their game a bit like the rest of us. We approached numerous companies to develop what we do online, and their tech teams have been working around the clock to get a platform that we can use, which integrates Zoom, which has booking systems, which has interactive facilities, stuff like that. So like I said before, we've gone 3 years into the future already. So the tech industry must be flying. The tech guys are all over it. We're in talks with the company at the minute about getting more interactive stuff on the screens while we're live. And again, it's challenging for them, but they're rising to it. So it looks positive.
That's brilliant. Do you have any viewpoints from Milton Keynes' perspective, Ian, or from technology from your members?
No, nothing specific, but I think that the problem we all face, as ever, is it innovation that comes first, or the problem that we need solving? And maybe, I don't know whether SEMLEP or whether the DMOs could help, but maybe a forum for those businesses with a specific problem, together with innovators, maybe technical or whatever. Quite often I talk to businesses who have a problem but don't know where to go to maybe solve it technically or physically, or go to a consultant to decide whether they need to change things. So I think maybe there's an opportunity for us as a group, going beyond, is to create forums so that businesses who've got issues that they can't solve can maybe talk to people who've got innovative ways already, or can go to innovators to come up with technical solutions for those problems.
That's a brilliant idea. Thanks very much, Ian. Have any of my panelists got anything else that they'd like to say before we close? No? Brilliant. Thank you very much to everybody, and thank you to all the attendees. We will be sending a follow-up email which will give the links to what we've discussed today, and some extra information, including the 6 points from Ian. We'll also send a short survey. I know we don't do surveys, Ian, but we will be having one, and we would be very grateful if you could complete it. If you have any further questions with regards to business support or COVID-19 or anything, then the number for the Growth Hub is on your screen now, and the email, then please contact us about anything that you would like to know about business support. We are here to help. So finally, I just want to thank everybody for joining today, and for the panelists, and enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck with reopening.